Amen.
How many members do we have?
Amy, do you like to welcome everyone and do the roll call? Amy, would you like to welcome everyone and do the roll call?
I absolutely can. Welcome everyone to the international, or the independent sales tax.
We got
It is late Thursday before Good Friday. My apologies. The Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee meeting of March 28, 2024. I'll do the roll call. Mr. Frederick Atkins.
here.
Mrs. Greta Campbell. Here. Mrs. Bobby D'Alessandro called in for an excused absence. Mr. Fred Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Joe Mazurkowitz also called in for an excused absence. Mr. Joseph Mitchell and Mr. Harlan Parrish also excused absences. Mr. Cole Peacock.
Present.
Mr. Matthew Ropestorff.
Here.
Mr. Jay Santos is on an excused absence. Ms. Sia Sherman. Here. Mr. Chris Semino.
Here.
And Mr. Steve Shemp and John Shannon are also on excused absence. And I believe on Zoom we have our board member representative, Ms. Fleming. She may or may not be able to hear us, but we'll check on that while we keep going.
Okay, all right. Next on the agenda is approval of the prior meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Move approved. Second.
Okay, we're getting the
No,
motion
okay.
and second. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. That's it, okay. Do we have any public comments? No public is here. And next on the agenda is the sheriff update. And what I'd just like to show our appreciation and give thanks to the ones that have put on some of the presentations out there. Cole Peacock did a presentation at the Rotary Club of Florida, Fort Myers, I'm sorry. Chris did the Rotary Club at Estero, and Steve and Sia Sherman did the North Fort Myers Rotary Club, and Jay Santos did the Rotary Club of Cape Coral. We just like
Okay,
to
thank
show our
you.
appreciation to them and thank them for putting on those presentations. I'm sure they did a great job, but I know Steve is supposed to be like the guru of it, you know, and everything. And we do have an upcoming one in April the 29th in Harlan Parish is supposed to be putting that one on April the 29th. And he'll be doing the Rotary Club of Fort Myers South. And that's the update. That's on the update that I have, I think. Yep. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Is Ms. Fleming, beg your pardon?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add, for anyone who has not done a presentation, they're very easy. The school district puts together the package. It's not difficult to do, and I was pleasantly surprised at how engaged the audiences were, because they generally want to know what the taxes are going for.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's been one of they've been trying to get me to do one, and I just, for a lot of things, time, not to do one, but that is, I think it's very important that we all try to do one, you know, sometime. And I think we have some coming up in the future, right?
And can I say, you know, school district staff very helpful in preparing everything and working with us and setting up the time. So thank you to the school district staff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any more comments about the presentations? Okay. Is Ms. Fleming on board? Does she have any comments? Board member update?
At this point, we do not have her on the team or the Zoom meeting, so if we get notification that she has joined, we can come back to her if that's okay with you.
Okay, that's fine. Next on the agenda is review of the sales tax fund project. So it is going to be Frederick, huh? That's a good name.
It is, it is. And we got a Fred as well, right? Yeah. Good afternoon, good evening. Frederick Ross, Executive Director of Facility Operations for the district. Here on this portion representing our construction department, Scott Rickenbacher, our director, and we'll be going over a few projects that we have ongoing with the sales tax. To refresh your memory, we have them separated into the phases. First phase is the procurement phase, with the procurement department executing a RFQ or a bid to choose a contractor. And then working with legal to actually get those contracts executed. So for our first phase, we have 3 projects in that phase right now in the procurement phase, 2 HVAC projects at Spring Creek and Edgewood Academy. Both of those are air handler change-outs and upgrades. Edgewood is also some repiping being done. And then the third project is Bonita Springs Elementary School, where we're looking to do basically a whole campus renovation, and both of those are, as I said, currently in the procurement stage. That next phase is the design phase. So once we contracted, that project typically goes into the hands of an architect or engineer for the design of that project. And listed here, we have several projects in that phase. Cape Coral Tech, seeing some recent renderings of that campus, and they'll be able to expand a little bit with the absence of the Hector Cafaretta that was previously right next door, looking at another site for that Hector Cafaretta, so that gives them some ability to expand there on that site. Next, we have several traffic improvement and study projects. We get those calls and see those instances where schools just have excessive traffic in the areas of let out and check-in times. So we, do studies and look for opportunities to improve that, whether it be stacking on the campus or some redesign of the parent pickup and bus loops to help alleviate the traffic on the major roadways. So several projects going on there. 3 HVAC projects, again, air handler change out on that Cypress Lake High School. That's actually going to be a central energy plant that will service not only the high school but also the art center, and will have tie-ins for the future for the middle school as well. So be a central energy plant for those 3 facilities, 2 right now but 3 in the future. So those are the projects in our design phase. And then after the design is complete, you get the shovels in the ground. So here's our projects in construction phase right now. Riverdale High School major campus renovation. That is for just the phase 2A of that project, which is the gym, the site work, and then the science wing. South Fort Myers High School is a re-roof, roof that we've had a lot of issues with. The quote here is the system is failing, bubbling, going on. A lot of calls of that even before the hurricane. So really happy to get that re-roof project done. I'm in a couple plumbing projects with Littleton being actually a total repiping of both water and sewer there for that facility. So those would be for our construction projects. Again, those in those 3 phases of procurement, design, and construction. I will note one that is missing is for the construction phase is the Franklin Park renovation that is also ongoing. Also did a tour of that school a couple weeks ago. It is on time for opening up this August. Had some meetings today with the it's going to kind of be a community with Lee Health and United Way section there for them to provide services. So met with them today, kind of start start talking about really getting things going. So it's really going to be exciting there for the Franklin part.
Start up in August.
That's the plan, yes, sir. That is the plan. That's why we're gearing up with them now. Yes, sir.
Go back to Bonita Spring again. I heard you say something about Bonita Spring, but I missed it, and I didn't. What's going on at Bonita Spring?
It's basically going to be a campus renovation project. There's some structural issues in one building that significantly needs to be looked at, but also they've been working with a lot of portables on that campus, so it's going to be a look to kind of revamp that entire campus, get them into
Classrooms.
in regular classrooms, exactly, and definitely, the structural issues as well.
Thank you for this. On the traffic design, are you just, traffic study, are you just looking at it for the purposes of understanding traffic, or is it in preparation for a construction project?
So initially is looking at a traffic issue, is when we've received the calls, we've seen the issues from the school with the traffic during those drop-off and pickup times. And once we see that, that's when if the need is there to move forward with a traffic study, and then we receive the results of that traffic study and then determine if action needs to be taken. Typically, that study comes with some recommendations of not only what we could do construction-wise, but even operational-wise. Is there things that we can do before we start, putting shovels in the ground? And then also if there's recommendations that we could pass along to, the other agencies that are, running the roadways that would also assist. We do that as well. One area, I'm not sure if it's actually a result of a traffic study, but on Littleton, they're doing some work there on that road, and it is our hope that work also, assists in our traffic issues that we're having at that school too. So our planning department working with the other municipalities on that as well.
You ever do a traffic study and find that no construction is required after it? The point of my question is, we're using sales tax dollars to fund out of the construction budget to do traffic studies. But if there's no construction that happens, does it belong in that construction bucket?
So the first part of your question, I'd have to check if there are traffic studies that were complete that were no construction. I don't know the answer to that, and we can get you that answer. But I do know that they do come with those, like I said, those operational recommendations, so we could resolve the issue without spending those dollars. But I guess we could have additional conversation if the study is the right place for that.
Yeah, my point is that the appropriate use of sales tax dollars funds to do traffic studies if it doesn't lead to construction, right?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think that the answer might be they're looking at it from a safety perspective as well. Because if you have people or children that are out on the road and need to be dropped off and there's traffic, it's a safety issue. And I think as far as safety goes, that would fall under the sales tax money, but you can't decide what you're going to do until you study it.
Right. And it's usually a precursor to a construction project. You have to do a traffic study.
Right.
So I see
Right.
it fits in there, but if you're just doing traffic studies, to do traffic studies, should it belong in the construction budget?
Right.
Yes. No, and I mean I was definitely not doing them just to do them, but I can, but I would have to see how many actually don't result in an actual construction project.
You need to do some construction.
Right. Right. Yeah. And a lot of times we're obviously when we're doing those, there's a significant issue there. Yeah.
If I could also recommend perhaps studying the entryway to Harns Marsh Middle and Harns Marsh Elementary.
Okay.
That's a bit of a nightmare, sir.
Okay.
With all due respect.
Oh, okay.
On 3 different roads.
Okay.
So,
I'll add it
that
to the
point,
list.
I will say, I'm serving on this logistics committee specifically for the bus logistics. And every single school in every district is being looked at for bus times. How do you increase those? What are the major issues? And each school has been highlighted. And we've been, I think the superintendent put this together a little less than a year or so ago, so we've been at this for a while. You can clearly see, so Harns Marsh, you can clearly see schools that have issues related to entry and
that's-
exit points?
Yeah, I mean, the issue there is like buses have their own entrance for the middle school and the elementary school. There's legitimately one entrance for the middle and the elementary.
Yeah.
So even though elementary doesn't start or starts at 8:30, and the middle school doesn't start till 9 o'clock, you still have parents that are lining up for both that legitimately go out, not only Eunice, but out down 24th as well. So it presents from a fire safety perspective, from a student safety perspective, in my opinion, it creates a lot of risk. So,
100%. The only reason I'm bringing it up is I can tell you all of those are currently being looked at of how do they resolve some of those issues.
yeah.
I see Frederick, he's taking notes.
Okay. Any other
Any other
questions?
Any
Construction.
comment?
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
So it is Scott, you up?
No, Dave Newland,
Okay, Dave.
for the record, Dave Newland, Executive Director for Safety and Security. The last time I was here, we talked about the project we're working on was OpenGate, our weapon detection systems. Back then, we were going through the rollout of getting all of our schools equipped with OpenGate weapon systems. At that point, we're about up to 50 or so schools at that point, getting them the rollout done. We were working on our second order to come in. Like I mentioned before, the last time I was here, the hope was we would have the place to order the additional weapon systems for the rest of our schools to be here by January, February, and we would start implementation. So the good news is all the equipment has been delivered. The additional money came in through the state, so we were able to get that stuff, all the weapon systems in on time. We've been doing the rollout at the other schools that we started last month. So at that point right in time, we're about 62 schools that are completed right now. And that means every entry point at those schools have a weapon detection system, OpenGate, at those schools. By the end of April, we have a schedule this month. The end of April, the goal is every school, we will be done with this project by the end of April. That's the goal. So we have every school on a schedule this month. So we will meet the requirement that we talked about before when we first approached this project of having every school with weapon systems and every entry point at the school. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. We were able to achieve that goal, as you mentioned before. Alan, is there any questions about the OpenGate?
Every school,
Yep.
by when?
By end of April,
By the end of,
we have a schedule. So right now, we're about 62 schools are done. By end of April, every school we have on schedule, every school should be completed. That means every entry point, so any point that students come in or public comes into the school, OpenGate weapon system is there at that point.
Can you tell me how many entry points? 62 schools, but how many entry points?
There's over 80 schools, but overall, but yeah, entry points, it's based on the school. So we look at school design. We first started this project, we looked at school, we called, there were schools that were more of the easier, so the schools by easier design, it was easier to go into a school that has maybe one or two entrances, for example. The newer schools. The newer schools are all mostly inside. The older schools, you have more outside buildings, a little more of a challenge. So some of those schools at one point could have 4 or 5 entry points, let's say, for example. So part of our goal is to walk through those schools with the administration and see if we can minimize entry points with students and staff for safety. So we may have 5, at one point may have 5 entry points, but if we can minimize that and control pedestrian traffic for safety, that's what we're going to do. So that was part of our goal. So every single school we went to, we walked through those schools with administration, put a plan together to where OpenGate would be implemented at all those locations. And that was our part of our goal. So some schools were more of a challenge, and some were much easier, but that's, again, as we rolled it out, we made sure that we were doing every level of school in all 3 zones as we went forward to get that completed.
80 schools by the end of April could be 150 different access points.
All together?
Yeah.
That's going to be hard. I can tell you this, we have over about 340 systems. Now we have some extra for school as we expand.
That's a good number.
But I will tell you, we have a lot of systems, yes. So it can vary. On the average, schools will have maybe 4 systems. Some may have less, some may have a couple more. It depends on the school.
if I'm not mistaken, did I hear something recently that Lee County School District was one of the safest districts in the state or maybe nation, did I? Or did I, I'm dreaming this.
I mean, I can't say I've heard that, but I mean, I can tell you that we have had a lot of good, so far, success with this. We've had multiple districts in Florida have come down to watch us, how we work Open Gate. They want to see how we do it, so they can bring it back to their district. We've had calls from out of state, from North Carolina, California, to know how we are working this system so they can do it in their schools as well. So it's been positive at this point.
Good.
Sorry, Collier County, very aggressive with the fentanyl program and trying to slow fentanyl down. Is there anything that you need that the sales tax could fund after this? Like, I don't know how you slow fentanyl drug.
You're talking more like or vaping? Is that where? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to throw out something at this point in time. And to me, I look at our school, as I said before, when I look at our school district, everyone's different. And when we apply layers of security, we want to make sure that it works for our current system. They all kind of work together, if it makes sense. So what may work for one district may not work for ours. So I think there are all the things we're looking at to help strengthen or harden our school sites. And a lot, again, it's ongoing things. It's additional fencing is always an ongoing thing. Sometimes, we have a lot of our exterior schools have the exterior walkways, for example. So we're always looking to sometimes put the ornamental fencing on those walkway areas to enclose those, especially the older schools that have the classroom doors that are maybe exposed on the outside. So it's just an ongoing thing as we look at that, basically kind of see what makes sense. But we are continuing to, as we move forward with our technology and security, yes, there are things we are looking at right now that we feel it can definitely continue to strengthen our safety in our school district.
What's the life cycle of these machines?
They go, these open gate systems were developed by a company called Shea. Shea was the original inventor of the metal detector system, the Garrett detector. They've been around since the 60s. These can last, I mean, it's hard to put actually over 88,000 hours. They can last sometimes, I've heard up to 10 years possibly. When we reviewed these systems, one of the things we looked at was what's more compatible for a school district versus maybe, there's different systems out there, but for us, we didn't want something you had to plug in, for example, because a lot of our schools are outside. We wanted something that was weatherproof, something that worked great outside, that could go on battery for 10, 12 hours. And that's what, we look at these systems, a lot of other areas use these. Busch Gardens use these, SeaWorld uses these type of machines, Disney, other big parks. So we were able to listen, talk and go through the pros and cons. But these are very durable and last a long time. Again, being weatherproof, they can be used outside for games or whatever is needed as well. Any other questions? All right.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, thank you.
Who's up next?
That's our committee.
Good evening. How is everybody? Patrick Way, Director of Technology Operations. Here I wanted to talk to you about our last quarter. We did some Chromebook refresh with middle school, and we'd have some additional access control and intrusion detection. So we'll start with our student device refresh for middle school and K-8. Next slide, please. Okay, so we did approximately $9.8 million in refresh of Chromebook devices and peripherals, both middle and K-8. So in that evaluation, we provide a 3-year life cycle for the Chromebooks. They all come with a nice sleeve for protection, and the AC adapters are in there. So we plan and purchase these now. And then we work with the vendor over the next months to stage our delivery and whatnot to commence right after school ends. So pretty much on June 2nd, we will begin to deliver these new devices. At the same time, we're looking to pick up and start to recycle the old devices that we're going to be collecting and inventorying and picking up as well in the beginning of June. So you'll see in this summary here, most of our purchases here and planning all follow enrollment numbers and the quantities that are needed, and we evaluate loss and and that kind of stuff, break fix. Unfortunately, our middle school children are the most combative out there, so to speak, and still learning their responsible device management. So we have a lot of broken devices to fix and stuff, so sometimes our middle school level has the need for a little bit of increased spares and whatnot, but other than that, the group is pretty good. So 3 years, we'll be looking to refresh these again, and our high school group is the following year, and we kind of rotate it around every 3 years and try and perform those updates and keep everybody with refreshed equipment, good and quality stuff, and then it all needs to be renewed. They'll have new wireless functionality and different things every year that we have to accommodate.
What's the average price of a Chromebook that you're replacing here?
Right now, they are $394 in total, and that includes pretty much everything that comes along with it. So when we package up a Chromebook, it's more than just the hardware cost. I'd have to look a little closer. I'm not sure what the actual hardware is for cost, but then we add our required licensing for Chrome OS. We would add, there's tools that the students use, and those licenses get added right in, like Launchpad is one everybody's sort of familiar with. Everybody uses the nice graphical click-in to get to an easy application when they're students. So that licensing's all packaged in there. We negotiate warranties, and that is brought into it as well. So your standard Chromebook at a store has just the 1-year standard manufacturer warranty. We have a service crew with our vendors, staff on site, repairing daily, turning these around at no cost because we include that in our warranty.
9.8, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
At 9.8 million and 400 each, that's 24,000, 25,000 Chromebooks.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's a 3-year turnover. So are you planning to buy 24,000 Chromebooks a year from sales tax dollars?
Not every year, but every 3-year increments. It depends on the level. So this review right here is middle and K-8. Then high schools actually are fairly close in numbers, and then elementary even have more numbers than middle and high.
So I guess my question is, so they're a 3-year lifespan.
Yes, sir.
On these. You just replaced a quarter of the school district, right?
Yeah, effectively, you're correct.
So if you replace a quarter every year, I guess I'm trying to understand what's coming out of sales tax dollars versus what's coming out of the school district budget for Chromebooks. Because to Mr. Peacock's earlier question, the bigger issue is what happens when if the sales tax goes away, right? In 8 years, if we have to replace all of the security systems, or we are now replacing all the Chromebooks on the sales tax dollars.
Right.
You're putting a lot of pressure on the sales tax to continue into the future. So
Yes.
is there an issue of how much is being put on an operating budget and how much is on the sales tax?
Yes, I can answer that a little bit in terms of, well, what happens or what are the considerations for all these things if the sales tax is no longer here? And so that's a serious question for us to be able to contemplate across all the different categories that we're currently using the sales tax for, because it's such a significant portion of the capital budget at this time. So if at the point, or if it is not to be ongoing, then there is going to have to be a significant kind of rethinking and rebudgeting, reprioritization of things that are in the capital fund to fit into what the current revenues are. And I'm not sure if I'm completely answering the question, but it is, it is a significant funding source. So the contemplation of it not being there will have to be some significant prioritization changes in order to fit into what is the existing revenue at that time.
I understand your basic answer, but I'm still concerned about the question. Are we shifting things that should be in a basic operating budget over to the sales tax? And then when they go away, which might have been in a regular operating budget, are now in a separate thing that we can't afford to lose at some point?
Well, and potentially that could be true, but at that time, then the district would have to determine if Chromebooks, because we're talking about those Chromebooks right now, if that is an initiative that is working, that we want to continue, that we have the data in order to support continuing with, then it would be prioritized and budgeted within the revenue that we had, but something else would have to go. And so what would those things be would have to be determined at that point in time. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that's why the question of the tax is very important, because, it was able to provide many things that we didn't have previous to it, so.
I'm kind of with you, Chris. This kind of recurring expense. A lot of I'm just sitting here browsing over the resolution. A lot of it talks about fixed capital improvements, implementing hardware for various sites, and implementing technology hardware. It just doesn't read like it supports a recurring expense for things that have a very short life, relatively. So I'm kind of share that concern that this isn't really an intended expense here. But I mean, I don't want to step on the toes of the district's council or whoever's giving that guidance. But I think something from at least a public standpoint, if somebody were to come to me and ask, well, is this like installing the security stuff at the entrances? Like, that's installed hardware. Clearly spells it out in the resolution. I think I would have a harder time talking to people in my network who I communicate about recurring charges like this.
I look at it a little bit different, and that is, prior to the sales tax, I don't think it was one-to-one Chromebook to student. Now they're able to achieve a level of one-to-one. So I think it actually has, but I do see your point that it's reoccurring. If it's only got a 3-year shelf life, it needs to be budgeted again for 3 years from now. So we've achieved the goal.
It needs to be budgeted every year because you're only replacing a quarter of them.
We've achieved the goal of one-to-one, but now we put ourselves in a position where it's an ongoing expense.
What I don't want to get to is at the end of this 10-year tax, they say, well, we can take security out of the schools, or we can take computers away from kids because we don't have the money to do it. Right? You put up a new building, you got the building for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
You give a kid a computer, and 2 years later, you got to take it back. Or you got to take the computer.
Right.
It goes away.
Or they just work with older equipment.
Or share.
Right. Yeah, you can go backwards. So, I don't know, I like that. More comfortable with one-time expenditures that strengthen the system versus continuing to put reoccurring costs into the structure that are going to make it harder for this to go away.
I mean, it could still go away, but it would be more detrimental if it did.
Amy, is that something that y'all can look into? And
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. We can. I think the fundamental question really comes down to, how the prioritization process works and what's prioritized within the actual plan itself, which incorporates other funding sources beyond this one. And then, so the question to be answered after several years, if it ever goes away, is, all right, if the sales tax is not here, so to what extent, first of all, is Chromebooks the mechanism? Do we continue to offer it, and at what level do we continue to offer it, right? Because there's many options inside of how a Chromebook program could continue to go forward in terms of what level of offerings it will be to kids and how many and all of that. But understand what your questions are, so we can definitely continue the conversation at our next meeting if you all choose to. But that's basically the capital budgeting process each year, is determining those priorities and determining how they would fit in.
so what we're looking at then is a problem that could happen if the sales tax go away.
Yes, correct. That is, yes, that is correct. With this and other things, such as we build new schools, but the need for new schools won't go away if the sales tax goes away.
Right.
It just will, they will continue as long as growth continues. So that still puts additional pressure as, as well.
Well, that, just for the next meeting, I'd feel more comfortable if I knew kind of the thought process of how Chromebooks tie into the sales tax funds when, I'm reading the resolution. It says, in addition, the project also has a component for cost of installing safety and security equipment and retrofitting and providing for technology implementation, including hardware and software for various sites within the district. So I just don't know how Chromebooks meet that.
Understood.
They're putting it on that technology. That's what
But
they're,
that's the question that I was wondering about, Amy, for someone to look and see if there's a problem with Chromebooks being part of it.
I get,
Oh, okay, we have,
That seemed to be what he's concerned about.
I get the
Gotcha.
technology. It says, and retrofitting and providing for technology implementation, including hardware and software for various sites within the district.
right.
I think Chris is concerned what will happen if the sales tax go away. And he's more concerned about.
Does it actually?
Is it
Does
appropriate?
the Chromebook actually fall under the sales tax?
Understood, yes, we can.
I don't necessarily disagree with Mr. Repsdorf. But I believe that it qualifies under the resolution.
Okay.
But what I worry about is that if we continue to move what might be considered an operating cost over into sales tax dollars, when it goes away, it can't be absorbed by the operating or the limited capital, right? You build a new school, it'll be there for the next 30 or 40 years.
And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding when you say an operating cost, this is an approved capital expenditure. So when you say operating cost, I'm thinking operating budget, and that may not be how you mean it, but this is a capital expenditure.
The past 4 years of the sales tax, or 3 years, how much have we invested in Chromebooks? And is this more? This is 24,000 Chromebooks in 1 year. So are we moving more of our Chromebook replacement policy into sales tax dollars? And if we continue to do that, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. That may be different in whether it belongs or not, but the more and more it happens, the less and less comfortable I am with it.
Okay, so you want to know the split, if any, between funding sources for Chromebooks across those years, whether other funding sources were used or not. Is that what you're asking?
Are we putting more Chromebooks on the sales tax than we have in the past? Is that a trend, I guess?
Okay, understood, okay. And yes, we can bring the information back related to what Mr. Ropestorff was talking about in terms of the referendum itself. But yes, we had talked about that previously, and yes, it would be under the technology initiative, and had initially talked about major things that we were putting under the referendum, including Chromebooks, new schools, maintenance, things like that. And all of that had been kind of part of and cleared through all of the legal and conversations that we had previously concerning about it fitting underneath the referendum language that we had put in. But we can certainly bring back the additional information next time.
I think that the additional concern being that most of the other projects that we have a firm start and end date. There's a roof that you put on, there's an HVAC, you do the plumbing. This is a recurring every 3 years that we're trying to replace a third or a quarter of the machines that we have in the district. And this referendum essentially ends in 5. So what happens?
So, I mean, previous to the tax referendum, we did fund this through our own budget, and we assess our priorities through, our meetings and whatnot, and we would reprioritize. Academics sets and drives the curriculum, and the one-to-one was decided, and we had to break down and figure out what the funding was needed, present it, and they funded it. So we would go back to that exercise when this if it would happen that it wasn't renewed, and we would reprioritize all that we've been doing, and obviously, we would be doing much less, because we wouldn't have the funding to continue with as much as we did. But those are hard decisions, and really, we would just follow whatever leadership and/or curriculum decide, and that was the one-to-one, so that's kind of why these evaluations happen in this way. We've done, like Amy said, we can report back on what's been done previously as well. But we did years of one-to-one on our own budget, and a couple now under tax dollars. And those would be all the levels and the rotations like you're referring to. Any other questions at this point, or?
Everybody satisfied? Okay. Yeah.
Good, okay. So the other slide I have, I apologize, I omitted the dollar sums, but I want to let you know these security upgrades for access control and intrusion detection are just shy of a couple $100,000. I'm going to summarize those for you, and I'll send it out in an email. We did forget to add that from the last time, but our access control and security updates here. Access control is all about, your ID badges and the door working and being able to gain entrance, and everybody needing entrance at certain times. So working through the rest of some of our elementary schools to provide those updates and ensure they have the proper magnet contacts and access on the doors that are needed throughout each one of those locations. Intrusion, similar but tied together, but more about motion detection and after hours and that kind of stuff, and has a lot more involved in it. And again, working at these locations over the last quarter to update those technology. There also are some camera modifications in there and models that don't work as well as some of the enhanced ones over the past 5 years, and we're looking to try and get those upgraded as well, and that's included in some of these updates. Anybody have any questions with regard to that? I apologize, I didn't put the numbers in there, but I'll follow up with that and get that to you, okay?
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very much. Frederick again.
Yep, I'm back. This time representing our maintenance department, our director, Barbara Cedeno, and her team are hard at the several capital projects. This summarizes their efforts through this fiscal year. So starting from July to date, these are all the purchase orders that have been cut and projects started. A total of 45. We've broken them down into these 12 categories. A couple to pull out. That highest category with 11 is those chillers. Several aged equipment that are being replaced. Hancock Creek, Sunshine Elementary, Tree Line Elementary are some examples of those. That painting project is a full exterior painting of Mariner High School. That is badly needed. Several cabinet replacement projects at Trafalgar Elementary and Middle, Tanglewood, and then there's also a couple full bathroom upgrades, getting them into ADA compliance on there. So those are the 45 projects, and still more they're looking to get going, preparing kind of for their summer projects at this time of year. And then the next slide are those same projects, but with the dollar amounts, so you can see the expenditures in those areas. A total of approximately just over 23 million for those 45 projects. And then last slide, I want to attempt to break it down by school level in order to kind of show where the different projects are lying. So right now, of those 45 projects, 22 are in elementary. That's 48.9% of the projects, and elementary schools represent 56.5% of our school types. So that's kind of the way you read that. Wanted to kind of really side-by-side comparison kind of seeing where those projects are compared to how many schools are in that category. Maintenance wanted me to note that projects schedules do vary depending on some uncontrollable conditions sometimes, but these are the ones that we're moving forward and look to have, like I said, some more going forward for this summertime. Any questions? Again, we want to kind of give a shout out to the maintenance crew. You know, these are capital projects that they're running in addition to kind of the preventive maintenance and day-to-day service requests, you know, they're running. So that HVAC supervisor, you know, he's getting calls from schools and they're servicing those calls. You know, he has his filters and preventive maintenance programs that they're out there doing, and then they still find time to run a few capital projects. So hard-working team.
Y'all busy.
Very busy, very, very busy. Any questions on the maintenance capital projects? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, are you gonna do yours combined, the two,
Yes.
okay.
Good evening, committee. Matt Acosta, Business Services Coordinator. So we're going to take a quick look on the numbers. The first slide we have here is our FY24 estimated capital revenue of $383 million. That's total capital revenue expected for the year. Of that, 126 is what we projected for our sales tax, which is equivalent to 33% of that budget. So as we kind of talked about, that's a large portion of what we have budgeted. And that does not include fund balances. Our next slide is the actual sales tax budget of $280 million, and this includes the previous year's carryover. Of that, you can kind of see the difference between what we've looked at the previous two meetings of this year. We've had a lot that's been in reserve, abnormal amount, and part of that was we were still working on moving some of those funds into different budgets. And so we've done that, and you can see that some of those percentages have now changed, where we have capital maintenance as the largest portion at 35%, and construction after that at 29%. This also includes debt service for those major construction projects. Our next slide is the year-over-year month earned, and as you can see, we are closely matching numbers from FY23. So a few of these are right on with what we've had for the previous year. And as you'll see, we're really kind of closely matching what we're looking at as projected. So the next slide is the sales tax revenue inception to date and our FY24 results to date. To date from 2019, we've expected projected $463 million, and we've received 570, which is about 9.4% above projected. For FY24, we've projected 68, and we've received about 70 million so far, so about 3.5% above projected. So really coming in close to what the projections are. And the final slide we have is our revenue tracking. So you can see the projected FY24 by month, as well as what we've received through January actuals, and then the difference and percentage difference. You can see a couple of them have been very close to what we've projected. So any questions?
Was looking at some of the charts. I saw on the pie chart, the construction includes debt service for the existing schools. It didn't look like we have a large portion of these funds being used for that debt service. Is that right? Is it relatively small that we're using sales tax funds to service for debt service on those new schools? Just trying to get an idea of how much of, you know, I saw the breakdown of where everything's going, but just how much of the sales tax funds is going to the debt service of those new schools.
So, yeah, when we look at that, those, I mean, obviously some of those services are going to be spread out. So we have some of those major projects that have been completed, but then those payments are then spread out significantly. So, you know, a lot of the times you don't, with those maintenance projects, you don't have necessarily it like one lump sum right away, but you have them do a continued amount over months and years that are they're expended. So are you asking like what percentage of the maintenance or of the construction is for debt
I
service?
guess Chris just kind of opened the box of looking towards the future. If we have, just making sure, we don't have a lot of long-term debt or debt service that extends out beyond, potentially the life of the resolution, that we would be relying on these funds for debt service. That's the general question.
Sorry, I can help answer that question. The debt that we took out on the buildings that we specifically intended to build with sales tax funds, we only took out the debt for no longer than the life of the bond, of the sales tax itself. And so all that debt will retire at the time when the initial run of the sales tax is up. The debt was no longer than that.
That answers my question.
And being on the committee for that long, I remember that conversation, and it was, if you got to build an $80 million gateway charter or some gateway, I guess it was, well, we don't have $80 million, but is it worthwhile to do it? Let's borrow the money and then pay it back through the sales tax revenues. And I have a couple questions, if I might. The first thing, $500 million is a remarkable amount. Cole turned to me and said, that's a lot of money. The first thing that I want to say is editorial, actually, which was that the concern of our community was if we passed a half-cent sales tax, it would slow down our economy. People are not in favor of taxes around here. I'd say that over the last 5 years, it hasn't slowed down a whole lot. So, the half-penny sales tax hasn't had a major impact on our economy while also generating $500 million for our school system. I think of the $500 million, it's hard to say, you've spent 350 million?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's.
Yeah,
Is it possible, because the other
352.
issue with dealing with taxpayers is that you're taking money out of their pocket by charging them a half a penny sales tax. There's the perception that that money is gone. Of the $352 million, is there any way for us to say, this has been reinvested back into our community? I mean, we might be buying security systems that are only made in Seattle or something, and we have to buy those, or Chromebooks that are made in California. But we're paying a lot of construction companies, and we're paying a lot of flooring companies and AC companies. Is there a way to understand how much of that is being reinvested into our local economy?
That's a really good point.
I know we have done a study where we have looked at what the impact is to the community in jobs and in just additional jobs and generating revenue and so forth. So I believe that's something we could make available? Or do we have available? I know we've
Yes, I believe we did get some preliminary information from that we certainly could discuss at our next meeting. Yep, absolutely.
And could that be instituted into the presentation that they're making out there too, and everything that y'all have been doing? Would it help?
Yeah, it would depend on what it said.
What it say?
I mean, if we're spending all the money and giving it to Google in California, then we're not recycling it into it's good for the kids, but from an economy. But if we're hiring our own flooring companies and our own AC companies and our own construction companies to build these schools, then we are, an economic driver. The tax is therefore turning back to the community and driving the economy. I think it'd be, I don't know if your relational database has this, but how many of those companies are local? We're putting the money back into our local pockets.
Right. I mean, when we talk about when we've done this presentation, that 1 out of 3 people is impacted by the school district, and I think when you look at, like, we're investing in that, and in that way, you have that percentage that's being impacted in the community as well. I mean, we're talking about jobs and so forth, but I kind of look at it that way, that it is going into that impact to a large portion of our community.
Yeah, the impact on the educational quality and the families is a great way to look at it, but also from a financial perspective. There are construction companies that are in business because the school district continues to hire them for flooring jobs, maintenance jobs.
I can name a handful of them.
Right? This is good. It's good for our economy.
Yeah.
It could be considered good for our economy.
Any other questions?
Additional comments, question?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. All right, but we need now to make a motion for the sales tax financial and the projects as presented. So we're doing one at a time. I need a motion to accept the sales tax financials.
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, been motion and second to accept the sales tax financial. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Now I need a motion for the project as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, been motion and second to accept the projects as presented. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Ayes have it. Okay, members' comments? Any member comments? You're ready to go home, ain't you?
I'm just trying to keep you under an hour. Right? Just to, so you can...
Can anyone hear me? I'm so sorry. This is Board Member Fleming. I've been on the call this entire time.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say thank you to the committee members that are here tonight. I know it's a long weekend, but I incredibly appreciate the amount of information that was held tonight by not only staff, but the wonderful questions that were from the community and the constituents that serve on this community, or on this committee, excuse me. I've been taking precarious notes myself. So hopefully we can come back with some answers to some of the questions I heard tonight. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew I was on the call.
All right, thank you. All right, before we adjourn, I just want to remind you of a future meetings date and see if everyone in line with that. The next meeting will be June the 20th, and then we have one September the 19th and December the 5th. Is everyone okay with those dates?
Yes, sir.
I will not be at the June meeting. I will be in Spain with my son.
That's excused.
Yeah, that's an excuse, absent.
He is playing in an international soccer tournament. So
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Have fun. That'll be really cool.
17 countries, and we're gonna go to Spain, France, and Andorra. So it'll be really cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, once in a lifetime opportunity.
And he gets to play in all of those different locations?
Yeah, he gets to play through 3 countries. Yeah, there's a game in each country.
That's awesome.
It's gonna be really cool.
and
What a great experience.
great experience, yeah.
Yeah, that's excused.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Did I make it? Oh, 1 minute is fair.
You might be
But you
the next
started a little
chair.
late, so you're doing great.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for all your
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
presentations.
Thanks.
Good.
Yeah.